The courtroom felt colder than it should have. The air still carried the echoes of the judge's gavel, the final declaration that marked Samantha Evans' victory, though it didn't feel like one. Her name had been cleared, her assets protected, her dignity restored on paper. But inside, she was hollow. Daniel Whitmore's face flashed in her mind, that charming, practiced smile he used in court, the same one that had once convinced her he was capable of love. Now it only reminded her of deceit dressed in luxury. He had betrayed her with a calm so smooth it was almost cruel. When the judge announced her victory, Samantha hadn't smiled. She had only nodded, her heart as heavy as the mahogany furniture that surrounded her. The lawyers dispersed, voices fading into the hum of conversation. She gathered her files with trembling fingers, tucking them into her worn leather briefcase. The marble floor beneath her heels reflected the woman she barely recognized. Composed, beautiful, victorious, but stripped bare inside. Every echo of her steps down that corridor was a reminder that she was walking away from a man she had once promised forever to. Outside the courtroom, flashes of cameras met her eyes. Daniel's family, polished, bitter, humiliated, whispered like vultures picking at the last of a carcass. Daniel himself leaned against the hallway wall, his jaw tight, his arrogance cracked but not broken. "You'll regret this," he hissed, too low for anyone else to hear. "You'll never make it without my name." Samantha didn't answer. She didn't have to. The judge had already given her everything that mattered: the practice, her independence, her name. But what did freedom mean when it came at the price of her heart? She walked past him, her chin lifted high, her breathing uneven. The courthouse doors loomed ahead, sunlight streaming through the glass like judgment. She pushed them open and stepped into the sharp chill of Denver air. It hit her all at once: the exhaustion from sleepless nights, the hunger from skipped meals, the grief she'd kept buried for weeks, the weight of 2 years of fighting, pleading, proving her worth. Her body swayed, her vision clouded, and the world tilted on its axis. For a heartbeat, she felt nothing but cold marble rushing up to meet her. Then warmth. Strong arms caught her mid-fall, pulling her against a chest that smelled faintly of soap and cedar. A deep voice spoke near her ear, calm, steady, grounding her in a world that had just shattered. "I've got you," he said. Samantha blinked, trying to focus through the blur. The man holding her was dressed simply: jeans, work boots, a flannel shirt rolled up to his elbows. His hands were calloused, his face tanned, but his eyes were the color of a storm she didn't want to escape. The crowd that had gathered whispered in confusion. Someone called for help, and then she heard it, Daniel's voice, cutting through the noise. "Samantha." Her rescuer shifted, shielding her from view, his arm firm around her shoulders. His tone changed, deepened, sharpened, the kind of authority that made even chaos pause. "She's my wife," he said. The words dropped like thunder over the crowd. The murmurs stopped. Daniel froze on the courthouse steps, his face twisting from fury to disbelief. Samantha's pulse quickened, confusion swirling with a strange, inexplicable sense of safety. She didn't know who this man was, or why he had said that. But in that moment, dizzy, heartbroken, and barely holding herself together, the lie felt like the truest thing she'd heard in years. And as the world around her blurred again, Samantha Evans, the woman who had just lost everything, let herself fall completely into the arms of a stranger who had just claimed her as his own. Samantha woke to the quiet hum of machines and the faint scent of antiseptic. For a moment she couldn't remember where she was. Her mind floated in a fog of exhaustion and confusion until the memory of the courthouse came rushing back. The crowd, the cameras, the blinding light, and then the voice that had cut through everything. "She's my wife." She blinked, turning her head, and saw him sitting beside her hospital bed. Nathan Brooks. The stranger from the courthouse. The man who had caught her when her body gave out and claimed her with a single sentence that had stopped time. He sat in a chair that looked too small for his broad shoulders, elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped together like he was praying. When he saw her eyes open, he stood immediately, concern flooding his face. "You're awake," he said softly. "You fainted outside the courthouse. You've been out for a few hours." Samantha tried to sit up, but a dull ache pulsed through her head. She looked down and saw the IV taped to her wrist. "I'm fine," she muttered. "I don't even know you. Why were you there?" Nathan hesitated. His gaze flickered to the floor before meeting hers again. "I was passing by," he said. "I saw you fall. They wouldn't let me near you, so I told them you were my wife. It was the only way to keep them from crowding you or calling the press." The memory of Daniel's voice calling her name hit her like a punch to the chest. So it had been a lie, but not a cruel one. A shield. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. "But thank you." Nathan smiled, and the warmth in it felt like sunlight breaking through a storm. "You looked like you needed saving. I couldn't just stand there." He handed her a paper cup of water. His hands were strong but careful, the kind that built things instead of destroying them. She took the cup and studied him over the rim. The wine plaid shirt, the roughened palms, the faint stubble along his jaw. He looked like a man who worked hard for everything he had. But there was something in his eyes, a depth, a knowing, that didn't match the rest of him. When the nurse came in to check her vitals, Nathan stepped aside, quiet and polite. He waited until they were alone again before asking if she had anyone he could call. Samantha shook her head. "No one who matters." He nodded, not prying, just understanding. "I paid the bill," he said. "You don't have to worry about it." She frowned. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," he said simply. "But I wanted to." Samantha didn't know what to say. For months, every man she had known had taken something from her. Her time, her dignity, her peace. And now this stranger was giving without asking for anything in return. It made no sense, and yet it felt strangely safe. Later, when he helped her to the hospital exit, Daniel was waiting by the curb. His expensive suit looked out of place against the gray afternoon sky. The moment his eyes found Nathan's arm around her shoulders, his expression hardened. "Who the hell are you?" Daniel demanded. Nathan's voice was calm but unyielding. "The man who caught her when you let her fall." Daniel's face darkened. "Samantha, you don't know this guy. He could be anyone." She looked at Daniel, at the man, who had once promised her forever and delivered betrayal instead, and then at Nathan, whose quiet strength steadied her even now. "You're right," she said softly. "I don't know him, but I know he's not you." Nathan guided her to a waiting truck, its paint chipped, its seats worn but clean. As the door closed behind her, Samantha felt something she hadn't felt in months. Not victory, not relief. Something smaller, but more dangerous. Hope. Nathan drove in silence, the hum of the engine filling the space between them. After a while, he glanced her way. "You're safe now," he said. Samantha looked out the window, watching the city lights blur past. For the first time since her marriage ended, she believed him. But deep down, she also knew one thing with chilling certainty. A man who could lie so easily, even for the right reason, was capable of more secrets than she could yet imagine. Samantha woke to the sound of rain tapping against the small apartment window. The city looked different through the gray blur outside, softer, quieter. She hadn't planned to stay the night, but Nathan had insisted after she nearly fainted again. In the parking lot, he had offered her his couch, made her tea, and left her alone when she needed silence. That alone had told her more about him than any introduction could. Now he was in the kitchen, humming softly as he cooked. The smell of coffee, and something warm filled the room. She sat up, her eyes tracing the details of his home. The place was simple, but clean books stacked neatly in corners, tools arranged on the counter like a man who fixed things rather than replaced them. Yet there were small contradictions: a framed painting by a well-known local artist, a watch too elegant for a construction worker resting beside his phone, mourning. Nathan said, turning with a smile, "You like pancakes?" She nodded, still trying to understand why. This stranger made her feel safe. There was a quiet strength about him, not the kind that boasted, but the kind that stayed when everyone else walked away. "You didn't have to let me stay," she said softly. "I didn't want you alone after what happened," he replied. "You looked like you hadn't rested in months." He wasn't wrong. She ate in silence, the sound of the rain mixing with the clink of silverware. Nathan watched her carefully, not with pity, but with something deeper. Curiosity, maybe recognition. "What's next for you?" he asked after a while. "Starting over," she said. "Rebuilding my practice, my life. Everything I thought I had was built on lies." His jaw tightened like the word hit him personally. "Then you deserve a foundation that won't break." This time, he said. After breakfast, he offered to drive her to her office. She refused twice, but he didn't push. When she finally agreed, she noticed how easily he moved through traffic like a man used to control. Yet his truck was too modest for that kind of confidence. As they passed downtown, he pointed to a construction site on the corner. "That's me," he said, quietly. She glanced out the window, seeing workers in hard hats scaffolding stretching against the cloudy sky. "You're building that hotel?" she asked. "Yeah, piece by piece," he said, with a faint smile. But the truth sat heavier than his tone. Later that afternoon, as Samantha unlocked her office door, she froze. The power was out, only the faint light from the hallway spilling through the blinds. Her pulse quickened. Something didn't feel right. She stepped inside and found an envelope on her desk. No name, no return address. Inside was a single photograph of her and Nathan from that morning standing outside his truck. Someone had been watching them. Her breath hitched. She looked out the window, half expecting to see Daniel's car, but the street was empty. She tucked the photo into her purse and locked the door from the inside. That night, Nathan found her sitting in the dark in his apartment, again, eyes unfocused, hands trembling. She didn't say anything at first, just handed him the picture. His face hardened for the first time since she'd met him. "Who would do this?" she whispered. He looked at her, then really looked like he was choosing every word, carefully. "Someone who wants to remind you that freedom comes with a price," he said. Then he tore the photo in half and threw it in the trash. Samantha didn't know whether to be comforted or terrified, but when he reached out his hand, she took it. His palm was warm, steady, grounding her again. Yet deep inside her, a small voice whispered that this man carried shadows of his own, and that whoever had taken that photograph might know a truth she wasn't ready to face. Outside, the storm deepened, and somewhere between thunder and heartbeat, Samantha realized her life had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The next morning, Samantha woke with a sense of unease still lingering from the night before. The torn photograph haunted her thoughts, and no amount of coffee or courtroom preparation could shake the feeling that someone was watching her. The city looked ordinary from her window, but she could feel the weight of unseen eyes following her every step. Nathan had promised to look into it. He said he had a few contacts who might be able to trace where the photo came from, but there was something in his tone, something careful, almost rehearsed, that made her wonder how a construction worker could have those kinds of contacts. When she arrived at her office, the power was working again, but the air felt different. A vase that had always sat perfectly centered on her bookshelf was slightly turned. A single file on her desk was open to a page she hadn't left it on. It could have been her imagination, or it could have been a warning. She called security, but the guard downstairs swore no one had entered overnight. By the time Nathan showed up at her door that evening, she was shaking. He took one look at her face and locked the door behind him. "Tell me everything," he said, and she did. She told him about the vase, the file, the lingering feeling of being watched. He listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening with every word. When she finished, he walked to the window and looked out at the dark street below. "Whoever is doing this wants you scared," he said softly. "But I won't let that happen." "How can you stop them?" she asked. "You can't even tell me who you really are." He turned then, his eyes unreadable. "Samantha, I told you the truth. I work in construction. I build things, that part's real." But she heard what he didn't say. He built things. But what kind of things? He reached for her hand. She almost pulled away. But the steadiness of his touch calmed her. It was the same quiet strength that had caught her when she fell. "Let's get out of the city for a few days," he said. "You need a break, and I have a project outside Boulder. The air will do you good." She hesitated. Every instinct told her to say no, to stay in her world of courtrooms and logic. But the truth was, she was tired of pretending she wasn't falling apart. So she nodded. The next morning they drove out of Denver. The mountains rose like old gods watching over the valley. The farther they went, the lighter. Samantha felt. The air smelled of pine and rain. Nathan rolled the windows down and let the wind sweep through the truck. He told her stories about the people he'd worked with, small towns that needed rebuilding, old motels turned into shelters for families starting over. The way he spoke made her believe in hope again. For the first time since the divorce, she laughed. They stopped at a cabin near a half-finished construction site. The cabin was small, but warm. A fire burned in the stone fireplace. Nathan cooked dinner while Samantha walked outside into the crisp evening air. The stars stretched endlessly above her. For a moment she felt peace pure and complete. Inside, Nathan watched her from the window. His phone buzzed on the counter. He picked it up, reading a message that made his stomach drop. "Report delivered. She suspects nothing. Phase 2 ready." He deleted it quickly before she could turn around. His reflection in the glass showed a man divided between truth and the woman who trusted him more with every passing hour. Later that night they sat by the fire, Samantha resting her head on his shoulder. "You always make me feel safe," she whispered. Nathan closed his eyes, the guilt pressed heavy on his chest. He had come to protect her. But somewhere between the lie and the truth, he had fallen for her completely. He wanted to tell her everything. That he wasn't just a builder. That the danger surrounding her wasn't random. But he also knew that the moment he did, she might never look at him the same way again. Outside, the wind rose, howling through the trees as if warning that their borrowed peace would not last. And as the flames flickered across their faces, Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that something about the man beside her was both her salvation and her downfall. Samantha woke before sunrise to the sound of gravel crunching outside the cabin. She looked through the window and saw Nathan talking to two men near the construction site. Their voices were low, urgent. The men handed him a small folder before driving off into the mist. Nathan stood there for a long time, staring after them before coming inside, pretending nothing had happened. "You're up early," he said, his smile easy, but his eyes shadowed. She studied him, trying to read what he wasn't saying. "Just couldn't sleep," she replied. He poured her coffee and asked if she wanted to take a walk by the lake. She agreed, though something inside her whispered that peace was slipping away. The air outside was sharp and cold. The lake reflected the morning sky perfectly still, except for the faint ripples from the wind. Samantha wrapped her arms around herself. "I feel like we're being watched," she said quietly. Nathan stopped mid-step, his jaw tightening. "What makes you think that?" She shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe it's just nerves. But sometimes I feel like someone's following us." Nathan's hand brushed hers, grounding her. "You're safe with me," he said. She wanted to believe that. She wanted to trust the warmth in his eyes more than the warnings in her head. But as they walked back, she noticed the faint outline of tire tracks that hadn't been there the night before that evening, while Nathan showered. Samantha's curiosity finally broke through her restraint. She picked up the folder he had left on the table. Her hands trembled as she opened it, expecting blueprints or financial papers. Instead, she found photographs of herself from weeks ago, leaving court, driving home, working at her office. Each photo dated and tagged with coordinates. Her breath hitched and the folder slipped from her hands. When Nathan came out, he froze, seeing the photos scattered across the floor. His expression changed, instantly the calm mask slipping to reveal something darker. "You weren't supposed to see those," he said. "What is this?" Samantha whispered. "Who took these? Why do you have them?" He stepped closer, eyes pleading. "It's not what you think, I swear to you. I've been trying to protect you. Protect me," she said, her voice breaking. "You've been watching me." Nathan took a deep breath, his voice low and rough. "There's more going on than you know. Daniel isn't the only one who wanted to ruin you. There are people behind him, powerful people. They're tied to a legal network that launders money through court settlements. You got too close when you exposed his company in the divorce. I was sent to keep you safe." Sent by who, she asked. He hesitated then, whispered a name she didn't recognize, but one that made her blood run cold, because she had seen it once in her case files months ago. "Connected to a hidden account, you work for them?" she said, stepping back. "You lied to me about everything." "No, Nathan," said his voice desperate. "I lied about who sent me, but not about how I feel for you. I swear I never meant to fall in love with you, but I did." She shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "You don't fall in love with someone you spy on." Outside thunder rolled through the mountains as if echoing her fury. She grabbed her coat and ran into the storm. Nathan followed, shouting her name. The rain came down hard, soaking her as she stumbled down the dirt road. She could hear his footsteps behind her, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. When she reached the truck, she saw movement in the trees, a flash of light, a camera lens. She wasn't just running from Nathan now. She was running from whoever else had been watching all along. Nathan reached her. Just as she turned the key, he slammed his hand on the window, his voice raw. "Samantha, please listen to me. They're coming for you. You're not safe alone." She stared at him through the glass torn between fear and the memory of his arms catching her when she fell. He looked terrified, not angry, not manipulative, terrified in a way that told her whatever was coming was bigger than both of them. She hesitated, long enough for him to open the passenger door. "Get in," he said, his voice low, urgent. "We have to leave now." The rain blurred the world into streaks of silver and black. Samantha's pulse thundered in her ears as she drove into the darkness beside the man who had lied to protect her and might now be the only one who could keep her alive. The road twisted through the mountains like a dark ribbon, the headlights carving thin paths of light through the rain. Nathan's jaw was tight, his hands gripping the wheel with the kind of control that came from habit, not fear. Samantha sat beside him, her pulse pounding her heart, torn between trust and terror. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice shaking. "To somewhere they can't find us," he said, eyes never leaving the road. "Who are they, Nathan? Who are you really?" she demanded. The wipers beat against the windshield, his silence louder than thunder. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, measured. "The people I work for used to protect the innocent, but somewhere along the way they started protecting the rich and powerful. I stayed because I thought I could fix it from the inside, but then I met you, and I realized they were never going to let you go." She turned to him, confused. "Let me go? What are you talking about?" "You exposed something in your divorce papers," he said quietly. "You didn't know it, but one of Daniel's offshore accounts was linked to a larger network of political donors. They launder money through fake lawsuits. If those files ever resurface, a lot of powerful people will burn." The realization hit her like lightning. "That's why someone broke into my office," she whispered. "They weren't after me. They were after the evidence." He nodded. "You still have it?" "Don't. You!" Her hand went instinctively to her purse, the flash drive hidden in a false lining. She didn't answer, but the look in her eyes was enough. Nathan glanced at her, the tension between them thick. "You need to trust me, Samantha." "Trust you," she said, with a bitter laugh. "You lied to me from the start." He didn't deny it. "I lied to keep you alive," he said. "But right now they'll kill us both if we don't move fast." The truck came around a sharp bend and the headlights caught something in the road. A black SUV parked sideways, blocking both lanes. Nathan slammed the brakes. The tires screamed against the wet asphalt. 2 men stepped out, their faces hidden under hoods. One lifted a gun down, he shouted, pushing Samantha's head toward the floor, as bullets shattered the windshield. He threw the truck into reverse, the tires spinning in the mud. The SUV roared after them, its lights blinding. Nathan jerked the wheel, pulling onto a narrow forest road, branches scraping against the sides of this truck. They bounced violently over rocks and mud until the engine coughed and died. Smoke poured from under the hood. Nathan cursed low and steady. "Get out," he said, grabbing her hand. They ran into the forest, the sound of engines and shouting echoing. Behind them, branches clawed at her clothes, the rain soaking her to the bone. She stumbled once, and Nathan caught her, his hand warm against her wrist. "Keep moving," he whispered, his breath rough. They pushed deeper into the trees until the voices faded, replaced only by the roar of the storm. They stopped under an overhang of rock, both gasping for air. Samantha's legs trembled. "What now?" she asked. "They'll track us," Nathan said. "But not tonight. We'll head toward the ranger station at dawn. It's off the grid from their systems." She stared at him in the darkness, his face lit faintly by flashes of lightning. "You knew this would happen, didn't you? That's why you brought me here." He met her gaze, and for the first time she saw the truth behind, the calm. He wasn't a man who stumbled into her life by chance. He had been planning this from the moment he caught her outside the courthouse. "I was supposed to protect you," he said, his voice breaking. "But I fell in love instead." The words hit her, harder than the gunfire. She wanted to scream, wanted to run. But the raw honesty in his voice stopped her. She saw a man torn between duty and desire, between the orders he was given and the love he could no longer hide. The rain softened around them, the world narrowing to the sound of their breaths and the storm in their hearts. Nathan stepped closer, touching her face gently. "I'll get you out of this," he said, "even if it kills me." She should have pushed him away. But instead she whispered, "You already did." And in that fragile moment of truth, they both understood that love had become their most dangerous secret of all. The first light of dawn crept through the trees, turning the mist into gold. Samantha hadn't slept, her body aching from the night's escape. but her mind was wide awake, replaying Nathan's words over and over. I was supposed to protect you, but I fell in love instead. She didn't know whether to believe him or to run as far as she could. He was a stranger, and yet the only person keeping her alive. Nathan crouched near the stream filling a canteen, his clothes soaked from rain and mud. His movements were sharp-focused, the way a soldier might move when every second mattered. When he looked back at her, there was something new in his eyes. Not just fear, but guilt. The kind that carried a secret too heavy to speak aloud. "We have to move," he said. "The storm covered our tracks, but they'll regroup." Samantha followed him through the forest, her breath visible in the cold air. The silence between them was thick. She wanted to ask about the people chasing them, but she was afraid of the answer. By midday, they reached an abandoned ranger station hidden in the valley. Its roof sagged, but the walls stood strong. Nathan checked the perimeter before letting her inside. He found a box of emergency supplies, a first aid kit, a radio half buried under dust. When he turned it on, the static hummed low until a voice broke through, faint, but clear. "Target not recovered. Sweep north coordinate 497, repeat sweep north." Samantha's stomach dropped. They were still searching. Nathan smashed the radio to silence the signal. His jaw tightened. "We have a few hours, maybe less," he said. She looked around the small cabin and saw a folded map pinned to the wall, dotted with red marks, some circled, some crossed out. "Nathan, what is this?" she asked. He hesitated, then walked over and pulled the map down. "Those are safe houses," he said quietly. "Or they used to be until someone inside started selling information." "You mean someone from your own team?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "The same person who sent me to protect you, but also told them where to find you." He looked at her, then eyes dark with regret. "I think I was never meant to save you, Samantha. I was meant to deliver you." Her heart froze. "What are you talking about?" He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "I didn't know at first. They told me you were in danger, that someone wanted to silence you because of the evidence from your divorce. They said if I stayed close, I could protect you. But the more I learned, the more I realized they didn't want to protect you. They wanted to make sure you disappeared, before that flash drive ever reached the authorities." Samantha's mind spun. "The people who hired you, who are they?" He met her gaze, the truth spilling from him with quiet devastation. "My company, your company," she repeated. "You told me you built hotels." "I do," he said. "But Brooks Construction is a front. It's owned by Brooks Technologies, a global defense and intelligence firm. It's mine. I'm the CEO." The air left her lungs. Nathan Brooks, billionaire, philanthropist, and tech mogul. The name that filled news headlines, the man whose company had government contracts across 3 continents. She stared at him in disbelief. "You lied to me about everything." "I had to," he said. "The people after you are powerful, Samantha. They use me. They use my company. I thought I could protect you from inside the system. But when they realized I was falling for you, they turned on me too." She stepped back, the walls closing in. The man she had loved, the man who held her in the rain, was the same one connected to the network that wanted her dead. Before she could speak, the sound of helicopters ripped through the air. Nathan grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the back door. "Move now," he said. They burst into the woods as a flood of armed men surrounded the cabin. Bullets tore through the tree's branches, snapping above them. Nathan pulled her down behind a fallen log, his body shielding hers. "You see now," he said between breaths. "They don't care about me anymore. They only want you, and what's inside that flash drive. You knew about the drive." She whispered. "I had to," he said. "It's the only thing that can destroy them. But it will destroy me too." Samantha's heart raced. "You can't run from this forever," she said. He smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But I can make sure you live long enough to tell the world." They crawled deeper into the woods, the gunfire fading behind them. When they reached a clearing, Nathan stopped, his face pale and bleeding from a cut on his temple. He looked at her with fierce intensity. "If I don't make it, you go east. There's an airstrip 3 miles away. My pilot will take you to safety." She grabbed his arm, refusing to let go. "Don't you dare talk like that. You're not dying for me." He brushed his thumb against her cheek, his touch trembling. "I already died the day I met you. I just didn't know it yet." Then the ground exploded behind them. The force threw them both forward. Samantha hit the dirt, her ears ringing. She turned, searching for him through the smoke and debris. "Nathan," she screamed. But only silence answered. And for the first time, since the courthouse steps, Samantha realized she might have just lost the man who had lied to her, protected her, and loved her all at once. Samantha's world was smoke and silence when she opened her eyes. The explosion had thrown her into the underbrush. Her ears rang, her chest burned, but she was alive. She pushed herself up and searched through the haze. For Nathan, his name was the first sound that left her lips. The forest answered with only the sound of crackling fire. Then she saw movement through the smoke. Nathan limping toward her, blood streaking his face, one arm cradled against his side. He was alive but barely. She ran, to him, helping him to his feet. He looked at her with eyes full of relief and pain. "I told you to run," he said. "I'm not leaving you," she whispered. They stumbled deeper into the woods, the rising sun cutting through the mist with cold gold light. Behind them, distant voices shouted and dogs barked. The hunt was not over. By midday, they reached an abandoned mining tunnel carved into the side of the mountain. Nathan pulled her inside. The air was damp and cold. Water dripped from the ceiling. He collapsed against the stone wall. And for the first time, Samantha saw how pale he was. His shirt was soaked with blood. "You're hurt," she said, pressing her hands against his wound. "It's just a graze." He lied, but the way his breathing hitched betrayed him. She tore a piece of her sleeve and wrapped it tightly around his ribs. He watched her with a faint smile. "Even bleeding, you still give orders." She glared at him. "Stop joking, or I'll leave you here." "No, you won't," he said, "because you still trust me, even when you shouldn't." When the wind outside quieted, Nathan spoke again, low and serious. "There's something you need to know. Before they attacked, I got a message from one of my people, someone still loyal. They found the original server, the one that holds every record of the money trail tied to your case. It's in Denver. If we can get there tonight, we can end this." She looked at him in disbelief. "You can barely stand. You think we can just walk into a city filled with people who want us dead?" He met her gaze, steady and unflinching. "If we don't try, they win." That night, they made their way down the mountain, the darkness covering their every step. The moonlight broke through clouds, casting silver over the wet road. They stole a pickup truck. From an old rest stop, Nathan hot-wired it with practiced ease, another skill that didn't belong to a builder. They drove in silence, the city lights growing brighter in the distance. Samantha's mind raced with fear and something deeper. A question she didn't want to ask. How many lies were left between them? When they finally reached the edge of Denver, Nathan pulled into an abandoned warehouse near the industrial district. "This is it," he said. "If we get the files and send them to the press, everything ends." His eyes softened as he looked at her. "You'll be free in you?" she asked. "I'll lose everything," he said simply. "But maybe that's what I deserve." Before she could answer, the sound of tires screeched outside. A dozen black vehicles surrounded the building. Floodlights burst through the windows. Voices shouted through loudspeakers. "Nathan Brooks, come out with your hands up. You are under arrest for espionage and financial conspiracy." Samantha's blood went cold. They were framing him. The same people who hunted her were now turning him into the villain. Nathan grabbed her shoulders. "Listen to me. You have to go now. Take the drive and run. Don't argue this time." "No," she said, voice breaking. "I'm not leaving you again." He kissed her forehead, a desperate final touch. "Go," he whispered. "For once in my life, let me do something right." He pushed her toward a side door before stepping into the light outside. His hands were raised, his voice steady. "I'm the one you want." She slipped through the shadows, watching as armed agents swarmed him, forcing him to the ground. In that instant, Samantha realized the truth. Nathan hadn't just been protecting her. He had been sacrificing himself piece by piece to destroy the empire he'd built. She pressed her back against the wall, clutching the flash drive to her chest. The sirens echoed through the city, and for the first time, she understood that love had turned into war, and survival was no longer about staying alive. It was about finishing what he started. The city pulsed with sirens and storm clouds as Samantha ran through the alleyways, clutching the flash drive to her chest. She could still hear the echo of Nathan's voice in her head. "Run, Samantha, please run." She had done what he asked, but every step away from him felt like betrayal. Helicopters cut across the sky, their lights slicing through the rain. She ducked into a doorway, breathing hard, her soaked hair clinging to her face. She had nowhere to go. The police were hunting Nathan Brooks for crimes he didn't commit, and she knew the people behind it would come for her next. She remembered the name he had whispered before they were ambushed, the network of men who had used his company to launder billions. They had power over the courts, the police, the media. No one could be trusted. A figure appeared at the end of the alley. A flashlight beam swept across the bricks. Samantha froze. Then she heard a low voice. "It's me, Lauren." Samantha exhaled in disbelief. Lauren, her oldest friend, her paralegal from the firm. Lauren grabbed her arm. "We don't have much time. Nathan called me before they caught him. He said you'd come here." "Nathan called you," Samantha whispered. "He only said one thing," Lauren replied. "Get her to the archives." They raced through the dark streets toward the courthouse where Samantha's old files were stored. The same courthouse where her world had fallen apart just months ago. The same marble steps where Nathan had first caught her. The memories burned, but she pushed through them. Inside the courthouse, they slipped through a side entrance. Lauren led her to the basement where the city kept sealed evidence from high-profile cases. The room smelled of dust and forgotten justice. Samantha plugged the flash drive into a computer, and her hands trembled as hundreds of documents appeared on the screen. Banking records, offshore accounts, names of judges and senators tied to illegal money transfers. It was proof of everything Nathan had said. Lauren stared at the screen, her eyes wide. "Samantha, this is enough to destroy half the city. But if we leak this, they'll kill us both," Samantha said. "They'll have to catch us first." She copied the data onto several encrypted files, then looked at her friend. "I need you to take one to the press. The others I'll hide somewhere they'll never find." Lauren nodded, but before they could move, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Samantha yanked the flash drive from the computer and pushed Lauren toward a hidden exit. "Go now!" Lauren ran, disappearing into the shadows. The door burst open and two men in tactical gear stormed in. Guns raised, Samantha ducked behind a pillar and threw a metal folder across the room. The sound drew their fire. She sprinted for the stairs, bullets sparking against the walls. She burst through a service door into the rain-soaked night sirens wailing closer. The flash drive burned hot in her palm. She ran across the courthouse plaza when suddenly, a black car screeched to a stop in front of her. The door opened. Get in, a familiar voice ordered. She froze. Nathan leaned out, bloodied and pale, but alive. He had escaped. She climbed in before the men behind her could shoot. The car sped into the darkness. Nathan's hands gripped the wheel, his knuckles white. "I told you to run," he said. "You're supposed to be miles away. You think I could leave you?" She said fiercely. "I have everything we need right here." She held up the drive. Nathan looked at her like she was both salvation and ruin. "Samantha, you don't understand. If we release that data, it won't just take them down. It'll expose every secret deal my company ever made. It'll destroy everything, including me. Then maybe that's the price of truth," she said. He shook his head. "The truth always comes with blood. Samantha, you need to be ready for what happens next." The headlights caught the reflection of another car tailing them. Nathan pressed the accelerator. The chase began through the wet streets, their tires slicing through puddles. He looked at her once more. "If we survive tonight, the world will know who the real monsters are. But if we don't, at least they'll never forget your name." Samantha reached for his hand. The storm raged outside the city lights, blurring into streaks of gold and shadow. Ahead, the road disappeared into darkness, and neither of them knew if what waited there was freedom or the end. The night turned to fire and thunder as Nathan's car raced through the outskirts of the city. The rain poured harder, lightning flashing across the sky. The sound of engines behind them grew louder, the black cars gaining ground. Nathan's jaw was tight, eyes focused on the road, his face pale from blood loss. Samantha gripped the dashboard, the flash drive still in her hand. They were closing in. Nathan said, breathless. His voice was calm, but she could hear the strain in it. She looked out, the back window seeing the shadows of men aiming from the chasing cars. Nathan turned left, she shouted. He swerved onto an unfinished bridge, water streaming across the concrete. The road ended ahead beyond it. The river roared. "Nathan." "What are you doing?" she screamed. He didn't answer. He pressed harder on the accelerator. "The bridge isn't finished. Samantha said we'll die." Nathan looked at her then and smiled a small, tired smile. Not tonight. At the last second, he pulled the emergency brake. The car spun violently, crashing into a barrier. Bullets ripped through the air, glass shattering around them. Samantha's ears rang. Nathan pulled her down. "Stay low," he whispered. He reached under the seat and pulled out a small black device, a transmitter, flashing red. "What is that?" she asked. "The end of their empire," he said grimly. "Before we left the warehouse, I connected my company's main server to this. The moment they took me in, I triggered a trace. It's been recording every private transaction, every hidden fund, everything they tried to bury. The moment I press this button, it uploads directly to every major news network in the country." Samantha stared at him. "Nathan, they'll kill you if you do that." He gave a small nod. They already tried. The headlights of the enemy cars grew brighter. Nathan tossed her the flash drive. "You get to the river. Follow the current. There's an old boathouse downstream. You'll be safe there." Samantha shook her head. "I'm not leaving you. Not again." The men from the first car were getting closer. She could see their weapons glinting in the storm. Nathan touched her face, his hand trembling. "You once told me that truth was the only thing worth fighting for. This is our truth now, Samantha. You and me no more." Lies, he kissed her quickly, then turned back to the device. A burst of gunfire tore through the air. He pressed the button just as a bullet hit the hood of the car. The transmitter lit bright green. A second later, the city skyline flickered as news. Alerts began to spread across every channel. Bank accounts, offshore transfers, secret political deals. It was all out. Nathan grabbed her hand. "Run!" he shouted. They sprinted across the bridge, the rain blinding the sound of chaos behind them. A shot rang. Out. Samantha turned. Nathan stumbled, falling to one knee. Blood spread across his shoulder. She screamed his name and dragged him forward, refusing to stop. They reached the riverbank, slipping on wet rocks. Nathan collapsed, breathing hard. The sirens were closer now. "You did it," she said. Tears mixing with the rain. "You exposed them." He smiled weakly. "No, Samantha, we did." He reached into his jacket, pulling out a small silver ring. "I was saving this for a better day." She took it, hands shaking Nathan. "Don't you dare." He smiled again, the light fading from his eyes. "I told you I'd build something that lasts." And then he went still. Samantha screamed his name, holding him as the rain washed the blood away. In the distance, she could see lights flashing, the sound of helicopters and chaos. The world was changing, and Nathan Brooks had been the spark weeks. Later, the headlines told the story. Billionaire exposes corruption, dies in mysterious explosion. Investigations open worldwide. Samantha stood on the steps of the courthouse once more this time, not as a broken woman, but as the founder of the Nathan Brooks Foundation for Justice. The flash drive had become a symbol of truth. His company was gone, but his name had become something greater, not power, not money, but courage. Samantha looked up at the sky, her voice soft against the morning wind. "You didn't die a liar," she whispered. "You died a man who told the truth." As she walked inside to give her first public speech, the crowd parted for her. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted her name, but she didn't look back. She carried his ring on a chain around her neck, and the fire of his promise in her heart. Somewhere deep down, she felt him still in every heartbeat, every breath reminding her that love built on truth never dies. It only transforms, and when she took the podium, her voice steady and clear, she said the words that would define the rest of her life. Justice is not about revenge, it's about truth. And truth, no matter how dangerous, will always set us free.